أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فاغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أتخذوا من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني زل في ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا مهضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة وأحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم. والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم. لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون. وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون. وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين. وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون. وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين. وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا ونطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين. ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون. ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون. قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مركدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون. فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون. إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم. وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم. ولقد ضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تأكلون. هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون. اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون. ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون. ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون. ومن نؤمر ننخس في الخلق أفلا يعقلون. وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويهك القول على الكافرين. أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون. واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند مهضرون. فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون. أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناهم من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون. سورة مباركة الفاتحة.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك الإثم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء. اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن توزعني شكرك وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانيا وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك ولا مكانك وخفي مكرك وزهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لقبائه ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترت وكم من فاده من البلاء أقلت وكم من إثار وقيت وكم من مكروه دفعته وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرت. اللهم عزم بلائي وعفرت بسوء حالي وقصرت بأعمالي وقادت بأغلالي وحبسني النفس بعد عملي وخدتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومثالي. يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك أن لا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفزعني بختيمة طلعت عليه من سري ولا تعجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لغيرك أسأله كشف ذري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكم اتبعت في هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أحوى وأسأده على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعد حدودك وخالفت بعض أوامرك فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاؤك والزمني حكمك وبلاؤك وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذئنا معترفا. لا أجد مفر مما كان مني ولا مفزا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في ساعة من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة زري وفكني من شد وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عزمي. يا من بدا خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي هبني الابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي. يا إلهي وسيدي وربي أتراك معذب بنارك بعد توحيدك وبعد من توى عليه قلبي من معرفتك ولهج به لساني من ذكرك واعتقده ضميري من حبك وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك. هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تزيّ من ربيت أو تبعد من أدنيت أو تشرد من آويت أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمت. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا وبشكرك مادحا وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا وعلى ضمائر رحوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة وعلى جوارح سات الأوطان تعبدك طاعية وشارت باستغفارك مذئنا ما هكذا الظن بك ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم يا ربي وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكثو يسير بقاء كثير مدته فكيف احتمال لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه ولا يخفف عن أهله لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف لي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي لأي الأمور إليك أشكو ولما منه أزج وأبكي لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته فلئن سيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك وهبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجاء عفوك فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناطقا لأزجن إليك بين أهلها زجيج العاملين ولا أصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين ولا أبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين ولا أنادينك إن كنت يا ولي المؤمنين يا غاية آمال العارفين يا غياث المستغيثين يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين ويا إله العالمين أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته وذاك طعم عذابها بمعصيته وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته وهو يزج إليك زجيج مؤمل لرحمتك ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي فكيف يبكى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك وأم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك أم كيف يهركه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقه أم كيف تزجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا رب أم كيف يرجو فضلك فيتكه منها فتتركه فيها هيهات ما ذلك الظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشبه لما عملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك فباليقين أكتو لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاهديك وقضيت به من إخلاد معانديك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين وأن تجلى ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما أفمن كان مؤمن كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمته وكل ذنب أذنبته وكل قبيح أسررت وكل جهل عملته كتمته أو أعلنته أخفيته أو أظهرته وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جواره وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر حظي من كل خير أنزلته أو إحسان فضلته أو بر نشرته أو رزق بسطته أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستره يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي يا من بيده ناصيتي يا عليما بذري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب أسألك بحقك وقدسك وعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورا وبخدمتك موصولا وأعمالي عندك مقبولا حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب قوي على خدمتك جواره واشدد على العزيمة جوانه وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك حتى أسرع إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في المبارزين وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين وأخافك مخافة الموقنين واجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فارد ومن قادني فقد واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك وأقربهم منزلة منك وخصهم زلفة لديك فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك وجد لي بجودك وعطف علي بمجدك واحفظني برحمتك واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا وقلبي بحبك متيما ومن علي بحسن إجابتك وقلني أسرتي واغفر لي زلتي فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وزمنت لهم الإجابة. فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني منايا ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء فإنك فعال لما تشاء يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاؤه البكاء يا سابغ النعم يا دافع النقم يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام يا عالما لا يعلم صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بما أنت أهله وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآله. سورة المباركة الفاتحة.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Sayyid Hasan Rizvi, respected elders, dearest brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum, Jami wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Surah Fatiha is requested for all marhumin listed on the screen as well as all other marhumin. Surah Al-Mubarak Al-Fatiha. Dua Shfa Maris is requested for all those in need here and elsewhere, as well as those listed on the screen. Let us recite together. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amma yujibu al-mustarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su'. Amma yujibu al-mustarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su'. Amma yujibu al-mustarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su'. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. يا الله, Let us now invite Sayyid Hasan Rizvi to please come forward for tonight's Majalis. Bar Muhammad wa al Muhammad salawat.
محمد صلوات
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين شفيع المذنبين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We have two questions on Slido. I think have been left over for a few weeks now. First one, person asks, what are your thoughts on Andrew Tate converting to Islam? And in parentheses, he really did. If he did and he really did, alhamdulillah, good for him. And I think we mentioned this before. We just have to be careful of this sort of celebrity influencer worship culture that's really been plaguing our communities for a long time. If he is a Muslim now, which apparently he is, and he's practicing, it's fine, but if he starts releasing material and starts to give advice to Muslims, especially based on some of the things he said before, then that's going to be a problem. So if he's a Muslim now, great, but I wouldn't take Islamic advice from him. That's it. We just have to be a bit careful. What are your thoughts on Halloween? So yeah, obviously this is an older question that came up, but we didn't get a chance to answer it before. In general, look, there's nothing haram, so to speak, about Halloween, right? It's not haram. I've never seen a marja give a fatwa like that. Because a larger conversation comes up about non-Islamic holidays, right? Western holidays, what do we celebrate, what don't we celebrate? Next week, of course, we have Thanksgiving. The same question's going to come up in a little while, next month, right, around Christmas time. So these questions will keep popping up. But it's interesting that these questions actually only happen for Halloween, Thanksgiving, usually people ask there, and then Christmas. Nobody's really asking around Valentine's Day or St. Patrick's Day or Flag Day or Arbor Day or Earth Day or what else is there, President's Day, Toyotathon, whatever other holidays there are. Nobody cares about that. So why is it for this part of the year everybody starts caring all of a sudden? I think it should be obvious. You can think about it if it's not obvious, but like I said, they're not haram necessarily. We have some fatwa surrounding this topic about copying the style and the culture of the kuffar. Yeah, it's not exactly related to this, but it does sort of relate to it. And that's a much larger conversation that maybe, inshallah, next month maybe we can get into. But in general, Halloween, I think you have to put in a separate category from other things. It's not the same as Christmas, which actually, at least, there's some veneration for, a personality, Nabi Isa alayhi salam, which is a good thing. All right, even Thanksgiving, the idea of thanks, okay, it's a good thing. We have to watch out for the whole, indigenous population slaughter, genocide thing that it all started from. That's a problem, obviously. But at least the general theme behind it of thanks, okay, fine, that's good. And obviously Turkey's awesome, so that's cool. But Halloween, what actual positive message is there? There is none. There's, intimidation, right? Knock on the door. If you don't give me, some, treats to leach my diabetes, then, who knows what I'm going to do to your place, right? So it's like, like a scam that they're running. Then you have the idea of the sort of occult culture behind it. Some of you might say, oh, but the pagan stuff, nobody really cares about that anymore. Yeah, maybe they don't actually view it as something satanic or pagan in nature, fine, but the general theme about Halloween is still about dark stuff, about tricking people, scaring people, spooking people. That's still there, obviously, right? This is not Islamic stuff, right? There's no pranking culture in Islam, right? These are things that are not recommended, and some Maraja even say it's haram to, perform these kind of things. Dressing up, that can also be very, very iffy too, depending on how you dress up, why you're dressing up. So Halloween's a very sort of sketchy holiday. It's tough. Like I said, the fatwa, put that aside. You're not going to find a fatwa really that says it's haram, but it's very, very difficult to say that this is something we should be doing, right? It's tough to say it's recommended. I've heard some ulama say that, don't participate yourself, right? Don't encourage your family to participate, but when kids come trick-or-treating, give them some candy. That's their advice. I don't know if I would necessarily agree with that. We ourselves, we didn't do that. We just put a sign outside saying that we weren't participating. You guys know my stance on sugary stuff, right? So I'm not supportive of that, the sugar industrial complex. So and the idea of, kids coming and if my kids come to the door and they see other people's kids dressed up in weird, scary costumes, I have to now do all this explanation, right? So I'd rather not do that. And sometimes you get younger kids, especially younger girls, dressed in very strange costumes too. I don't want, for the same reason, many of you may not take your kids to the beach, right? Because you don't want them to see certain things. Unfortunately, a lot of that stuff happens on Halloween too. So, you just have to be a little bit careful about that and really think about the larger question of, why is it that we are so keen on grabbing all these different things which are not part of our cultures from where we come from? It's not part of the Islamic culture or even the Eastern culture. Why are we fighting so hard just to grab and adapt and to consume this type of stuff? Even if it's not haram, we should really think about that larger question, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Let's continue with our topic. We've been talking about the social akhlaq of our individuals in our community, starting with the concept of ihsan. We went through a few different definitions and a few different levels. We went through one of the ayat of the Quran where Allah says, do ihsan in the same way that I have done ihsan to you. We looked at some of the background for this ayah in Surah Al-Qasas last week, even though it was virtual, and we found out that the historical context was that this was about the story of Qarun, right? With the story of Nabi Musa and Nabi Harun, alayhim as-salam, there was a few different personalities there, right? Besides those two, you have Fir'aun, you have Samirri, and then you have Qarun himself. And Haman is another one too. Each of these personalities bring something else to the table. Qarun is sort of this, as we saw last week, he's somebody that was very blessed in terms of, wealth. He had a very high status in the community back then, and he was initially a mu'min, he was a believer. He followed Nabi Musa alayhi salam. But what we saw is that he had a sort of crisis of faith, and we saw that the issue was when it came to his money, his wealth, when he was asked to give, then he decided no, he did his hisab, he said that this doesn't make sense. He did not want to actually give this wealth to Allah or to Musa, so he said, you know what, forget this. And that arrogance that was in his mind, that shaitan kind of whispered to him, was that I was the one, I used the blessings that God gave me to accumulate this wealth. I should be the one to spend it as I see fit too. Why should I give it to somebody else? If God gave me the benefit, the wisdom to gather this money, I should also have the wisdom to spend it. Why am I going to give it to just some random guy like Musa who doesn't know what to do with it? God wants me to spend it in the right way, right? So this whispers affected him, and he's called out in these ayat in Surah Al-Qasas from ayat 76 to 82. The story is there. And in the end, we see that he says that, this ilm is something that God gave me, right? It's my ilm that I have that led me to this. And Allah says, look, this is ihsan that I've done to you. I've given you this knowledge, I've given you this power, I've given you this wealth. You need to do the same for creation. And of course he didn't do that, and then he was destroyed, and they say the earth swallowed him and many others up. It was a very specific type of punishment for individuals like him, and this was his sort of downfall. So now we'll continue with the topic, inshallah. If you can recite another salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The topic of ihsan is addressed in many places in the Quran. So we went through a few weeks ago, I think it's been about a month now, when we showed that ihsan, the root letters for that word are ha, sin, and nun. It comes from the word husn or hasan or hasana, which initially just means good, goodness, beauty, and it can take deeper meanings as well. So all the derivatives of this same word of hasan or husn or husna, hasanat, all these, there's about 194 different usages of it in the Quran. And if you take away all the repetitions, you'll see that there's 12 unique forms of it being used. So sometimes it's a verb like hasuna, and sometimes it's a verb like ahsana, and which we're going to go through today, inshallah. And sometimes it comes as a noun, right? Ahsan, like ahsan al-khaliqeen, or ahsan al-makhluqeen. It comes with the word hasan, husn, hasana, hasanat, husna, ihsan, muhsin, muhsinat, all these types of words. So what we're going to first examine in the Quran is how Allah talked about ihsan in terms of His creation, in terms of the makhluqat. So first we'll look at Surah Al-Sajda, Surah 32, ayah number 7, where Allah there says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, الَّذِي أَحْسَنَ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ خَلْقَهُ. Allah is the one who did ihsan to every single thing in terms of its khulq, in terms of its creation. وَبَدَأَ خَلْقَ الْإِنسَانِ مِنْ طِينٍ. And Allah began the khalq and creation of humans, of insan, min teen. We might say, okay, well, what does one have to do with the other? Allah is saying, every single thing that I've made, everything in creation has been made the best, right? It's been made with this beauty. I've done the best job possible in terms of its creation. And mankind has been originated from dirt and clay. Well, what does one have to do with the other? All right, so this is one ayah. Hold on to that. We'll look at some of the other ones. In Surah Al-Ghafir, ayah number 64, Allah there says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Allahu alladhi ja'ala lakum al-ard qarara. Allah has made the earth or the ground a place, a qarar for you, right? It's a place where you're able to make it a habitat. You can live here. You can settle over here. Was-sama bana. The skies are like this ceiling, right? This foundation which can hold everything up. وَصَوَّرَكُمْ. And He's formed you, فَأَحْسَنَ صُوَرَكُمْ. So He formed you guys, for us, insan, and فَأَحْسَنَ صُوَرَكُمْ. So He formed us and then gave us the best type of form available. وَرَزَقَكُمْ مِنَ الطَّيِّبَاتِ. And He's given us rizq from tayyibat, all the things which are good. ذَلِكُمُ اللَّهُ رَبُّكُمْ. This is your Allah, who is your Rabb. فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ. So do tabarak, right? Blessed is Allah, who is Rabbul Alameen, Lord of everything. So over here, Allah is focusing on a few things. He mentions, again, different types of creation. He's talking about the earth first. He says, look, I gave this to you so you can live. You can function over here. Right? You've got oxygen to breathe. You've got the materials needed to build houses. You have food. Everything that you need to live here, you can. And the sama, these heavens or skies, the atmospheres, whatever, they're made as a foundation. And you see that they don't move into a place of chaos. Everything that's designed here in creation for you is specifically formed so that nothing is in chaos. Right now, everybody's involved in this. They've been involved in this space race for many, many years now, decades. And many people are interested in finding out. We know that we are depleting the resources on this planet. Right? We're ruining things over here. So in the meantime, a lot of these wealthy individuals and many of these organizations, they're going out and sending out these rockets, right? Sometimes manned, sometimes unmanned, satellites, things like this. They send them to different places, right? As far as Mars, they're saying, is there a place where we can actually send humans if it's necessary? A lot of movies explore this concept too, right? Can we actually exist on other planets? And we see that, most places are not a place that's actually livable for us. Either it gets too cold, or it gets too hot, or the atmosphere is really not breathable enough, right? No conditions are actually set for us properly. And they even have been looking for actual life forms, right? To see, can any actual life forms exist on these planets? And they've been searching for a while, and they try to find traces of bacteria or anything. And so far, we really don't have anything yet. So Allah perhaps is over here saying, look, everything that you insan need, the exact variables and factors and elements needed, I've put it for you over here. And you don't need to be religious for this. Even astrophysicists, atheists, they all recognize that if one variable, one small variable was off, right, in this quote-unquote, as they call it, the fine-tuned, universe. If one little thing was off, our life, carbon-based life, would not be possible. We couldn't have existed here. We wouldn't have been here, right? So perhaps Allah is saying, look, every single thing that's been made for you here is so that you can live and exist. Then he moves on and says, وَصَوَّرَكُمْ, and I've given you specific forms. فَأَحْسَنَ صُورَكُمْ, or صُوَرَكُمْ. And your forms, your surat, is the best type possible, the most beautiful type possible. And this is going to bring us to a larger question, right? And then Allah continues on. Like, the risk that I'm giving you is from the greatest things possible too. All the things that you need to survive and to, And then Allah is saying, look, this is the Rabb that you need to think about. Not some random person who's just managing your affairs and messes up things once in a while, but every single thing that you need for your existence has been perfectly crafted for you. Now let's keep this in mind as we go to the next 2 more ayat, inshallah. If you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The next one is in Surah Taghabun, ayah number 3. Allah says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, خَلَقَ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ بِالْحَقِّ. So now it's going a step higher, right? Before, Allah just says, I made it a place, that you can live and you can survive. Then He says that He created the samawat and ard, right? I don't want to go into the deeper meanings, but at least we'll consider it the heavens or the skies or the atmospheres and the earth. All of this has been created bil-haq, with truth. Right? So this is different than just saying, I made it so you can live. No, I made it based on reality, based on truth, the deeper concept there. And then the same thing as He said before, in the previous ayah, وَصَوَّرَكُمْ فَأَحْسَنَ صُوَرَكُمْ. Again, Allah is emphasizing this point. Your surat that I've given you, this form that you have here as insan, which we haven't described yet, but I want to take us there slowly. This surat and form that you have, it's the greatest, most beautiful form possible. وَإِلَيْهِ الْمَصِيرُ. And you are going to go back to Him. You're going back to Allah eventually. Now, we're looking at all these ayat and trying to figure out what exactly perhaps is at least one of the meanings that Allah is trying to get across, right? We know that, all right, theoretically we get it. Allah, you made this place. It's everything that we need to survive, we have. Okay, I get that. But in that first ayah in Surah Sajda, you're saying that we've been made for dirt. What does that have to do with being the best form possible? I don't get that. And then, Allah, you're saying that, you've made the earth a place for us to live, the samawat and the skies as this foundation, this bana, right, a ceiling. And then we have the best surat possible, the best form. And then over here, you're saying that, no, I've made the heavens and the earth and all this stuff, the skies and the atmosphere, the earth, everything is bil-haq, it's the truth, it's reality. And you have the best forms possible. Okay, well, what does this have to do with anything else? Like, what are we trying to get across here? Then, to tie all this together, we go to one more ayah. And this is in Surah Al-Tin, and we're just going to jump right to ayat number 4. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانِ فِي أَحْسَنِ التَّقْوِيمِ. That we have created insan on the best taqweem. Taqweem has many different meanings. Some people say it's stature, and some people say it's the best mold possible. Taqweem is coming from the same word as qawm or qa'im, right? To stand or to be firm. Sometimes, for those of you who might be into, let's say, crafts, or if you've worked with clay pots and things like that before, or any sort of building or carpentry, that, look, even if you build something with like toys or blocks, you want to build a beautiful, powerful structure. And again, it's a very cliche thing, it's obvious to all of us. Whatever you have in your mind, this great tall structure, especially kids, right? They love to build these tall, tall towers. And then, eventually, if they don't build a strong foundation, it comes crashing down. And sometimes they get enjoyment out of it. And actually, according to one of our riwayat, I believe it's from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. In one hadith, he lists some of the reasons why he loves children and why that they become a role model for adults. And he gives this as an example. He says that they can build things, destroy them, and be happy about it. He says that this is an example that the children from a young age, they're disconnected and they're not attached and addicted to the dunya. Right? They say that like a child build something, they knock it down and they're okay with it. You and I, right, something goes wrong with our house, or our car or our job or something we've been working on, we freak out, we lose our minds, we get stressed out, we get depressed and all this stuff. And children, whatever they do, right, especially at a very young age, they make all these things and they destroy it. They can take food and throw it on the ground. We freak out. We literally cry over spilled milk. But you see the kids, they don't have that worry. They don't have that concern. And sometimes we react and we teach kids, we make them materialistic and attached to the dunya based on our reaction. When they spill something, which is not a big deal, right? That's literally where the statement comes from. The idiom comes from, don't cry over spilled milk. Why? Because you can just clean it up. When we react negatively to something like that, the children learn from that. Say, oh, when you lose something in the dunya, then you better react negatively, right? That's learned behavior that they're getting from us. But if you say, oh, alhamdulillah, a little water spilled, a little milk spilled, your thing fell over, no problem, let's clean it up together, right? When they see that, they begin to see that, the dunya this kind of stuff doesn't mean anything. And sometimes, they say that children become the greatest teachers to us as parents or grandparents. That look, they're not connected to the dunya. Why are we getting so emotional and stressed out about it too? Anyway, let's go back to this. So taqweem can mean when something has been put together, when it is firm and stable, which means that it requires a proper foundation. And initially, sometimes when you see foundation being put up, if any of you have seen the initial parts of a building, you might say, look, what are they going to do with something like this? Or you just see 2x4s or it's a few sets of bricks and things like that. How in the world can that turn into this huge, huge house and structure? How is that possible? Or if you look at ancient buildings and the way that they would design mud or clay buildings, or if you see bricklayers, the way they design things, or if you go overseas, the way that they design it, there's my carpentry and engineering is not that strong, but the method that's used in many other countries, right, where they don't have the same materials as we do in the West, if you go and look at some of the buildings over there, so any of you who go for Ziyarat, whether it's Iraq or Iran or a place like that, the next time you're going around, look at the way that they design their buildings and compare it to the way that you've seen buildings over here. If you've been there recently, maybe you have some picture in your mind. It's much, much different. And you'd be shocked, right? When you look at it, you're like, how is this thing going to stand up? It doesn't make any sense. But, they know exactly what to do in order to keep those things strong and stable. So over here, Allah's saying, look, we have created insan on the best sort of stable structure possible. You might look at it, now let's go back to the beginning, right? That first ayah was saying what? In Surah As-Sajdah. That Allah said, look, I have made every single thing in creation, I've done ihsan of it. I've made it the most beautiful thing possible, and I've given it the ability to reach its own kamal and perfection. That's how I beautified it. And then Allah adds to it and says, وَبَدَأَ خَلْقَ الْإِنسَانِ مِنْ طِينٍ. And I've started you all from teen. I've started you all from dirt and clay. So perhaps the connection over here is this, that you and I, when we're seeing dirt and clay, the same way Shaitan looked at it too and said, how in the world can this be a khalifa? This dirt, this clay, this is not how you set up taqweem. This is not ahsan taqweem. This is literally, Shaitan's looking at it and said, this is garbage. How in the world do you take this and make a khalifa? How do you be, Allah, he must be thinking to himself, Shaitan back then, right? When he made this boo-boo and this error. It's like, how in the world can you make something like this out of dust and dirt and garbage and make this person your khalifa? I'm here made of proper materials. I've been doing your ibadat. So it's not just a physical thing for Shaitan. Right? Yes, he's made of fire. At the same time, that fiery material that he's made of as a jinn, plus his ibadah for years and thousands of years, he's like, look, I have the spiritual qualities too. I've got everything necessary. How is it possible for this insan, this dirty, disgusting little creature, that I see this base over here, how can this turn into something beautiful? I don't understand that. And this exact same issue is what many of us have in our lives too. If you think about it, one of the major questions or subjects of questions that you and I have is about the concept of divine justice, right? Why are all these bad things happening in the world? Why do bad things happen to me specifically? I do all this stuff, right? I come to the center, I participate, I donate, I give charity, I'm an azadar, I do all this stuff, and yet, things keep happening in my life. I don't understand. Why do bad things keep happening? And some people, when they think like that shak comes in, they start to take that deeper and deeper and deeper. And when it goes deeper, then they start questioning. What if Allah, why didn't He just put me in a different place? Why didn't He just put me in a different job? Why didn't He put me in a different city? Why didn't He put me in a different family? If I was with so-and-so family, maybe if I was I've heard people say that. If I was born in a family of ulama, then I wouldn't be having all these struggles. Or if I was a child of a prophet or an imam, I wouldn't have these problems. Or if I was an imam or a prophet, then I wouldn't have these issues. Or what if God just made me an angel instead? What if? Why didn't God do this? Why didn't God do that? And you just keep going back. Right? You just trace everything back. What is going on in what's really being questioned over there is, what a person is really thinking is, Allah, na'udhu billah, you made a mistake in the way that you created things. The way that my life is working out right now, it's clear that there was some issue along the way. Allah, you made a mistake. I shouldn't be suffering like this. If you put me in a different situation back then I would have been much better off. Allah, you messed up, not me. Right? This is really, if you ask subconsciously, that's what the question really is. That's what that statement means. We have a statement from Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad wa ala. Where he's reported to have said, "Lam yakhluq al-ashya' min usul azaliyah." That Allah didn't create things from some pre-eternal stuff that existed before. وَلَا مِنْ أَوَائِلِ الْأَبَدِيَّةِ. Nor were there things that Allah's like, no, there is some model that Allah's copying and pasting from. بَلْ خَلْقَ or خَلَقَ مَا خَلَقَ فَأَقَامَ حَدَّ. Allah created exactly what He wanted to create. And when He created that, and He did فَأَقَامَ, He made this taqweem and this stature, حَدَّ. He gave it the exact boundaries and limits that He wanted. The exact way that Allah wanted everything to be, He made it exactly in the way that He wanted it to be. وَصَوَّرَ مَا صَوَّرَ, and He formed it in the exact same way that He wanted to form it. فَأَحْسَنَ صُورَةً. The exact surat, the exact picture and the form and the shape that He wanted everything to turn out to be, that's the exact what He did. The exact way Allah wanted it to be. This point in aqaid is not a simple point to understand sometimes, right? It takes a little bit of, you have to understand the asma of Allah and the qualities and sifat. To understand that every single thing that Allah does or has done or will do, whatever, Allah's beyond time and place, obviously. But everything that's been done from Allah, وَمَا أَمْرُهُ إِلَّا الْوَاحِدَةِ, right? Everything that Allah's done is only one thing in reality. But everything is through ihsan. It's the most perfect way possible. There is no what if for us. There's no, well, if Allah just changed one variable, then we would have been better off. If Allah just didn't make Karbala happen, things would have been better off. Or if Allah just made everybody listen to Nabi Adam, we never would have been in this situation. No. Everything that needed to happen in this way. Allah knew all these different variables ahead of time, and this is the way that the world needed to be. Now, this is not predestination. I'm not saying everything's been fixed. But every single thing that's been carried out and we've seen, the world go out, do you think that Allah hasn't thought about it? That it didn't occur to Him when He was creating everything? I mean, He doesn't think about it in time and place like you and I do. But when we're asking these questions like, what if Allah did that? What if this? What if that? The question really in our minds is that, well, that means Allah missed something. It means that Allah didn't think that this thing is going to reach my perfection, right? That I can't now become the best version of myself because Allah didn't think of it. I can't do and reach my kamal because Allah messed up somewhere along the way. A'udhu billah. When Allah is saying, look, Amir al-Mu'mineen is trying to get us to understand every single thing that's here, this ihsan that Allah has done is that every single thing, everything, all makhluqat have been given their perfect forms. Now, you and I, with our free will, we can act out and manifest those perfect forms, or we can go against what Allah wants. That's our choice. The blame doesn't go to Allah. It's not that Allah, no, you missed the variable. No, you and I are the ones who are messing with Allah's variables. When He says, look, this is what you need to do to live a proper life, to get the best life possible, then do this. The blame doesn't go on Him. He says, look, I've given you a sharia, a path. I've given you everything that you need. You need to start following in those footsteps. If you don't, then you're going to see that there are repercussions. I've set up these laws of cause and effect and everything here. If you want to follow them, then be my guest. Do that, and you'll see that ahsan at-taqweem. You'll see the perfection show up in your life. If you don't, then Allah has also mentioned, I'm giving you examples of previous people. I've given you the examples of people like Qarun and Fir'aun and Haman and Samirri and Shaitan and all these other examples. They did not follow the standard procedure that I wanted them to. And you see what happened to them. It's the Quranic examples. It's the examples around the people of the Imams, the Ashab, the ones who are the Munafiqeen. All these examples are listed to say what? Look, I'm showing you what happens when you deviate just a little bit. This is what can happen to you. If you stick with the plan, you stick with the path, then you see your life takes a different trajectory. Even in the things that you might think are actually negative, what happens? What is the thing that we remember every single time? Whenever we think of gham and bala, we turn to Karbala every single time. Why? Why do we do that? Because they're the ones who understand what ahsan al-makhluqat and ahsan al-taqweem and all of that stuff means. That's why Imam Hussein and his family can see in the battlefield and see physically the worst thing possible that any human could witness, and they can say, no, ma ra'aytu illa jamila. Allah, this is terrible for everybody else, but for us, because we've done exactly what you've wanted us to do, then Allah, I can give away my 6-month-old child. Because this is what you've wanted it to do. I've done everything I needed to, Imam Hussein says. Allah, you're watching me, so my 6-month-old, my asghar is for you then. Because I know I have followed the protocols. I've known exactly, I've done what I've needed to do. I've tried to guide. I've tried to give hidayah. I've done all this. But at the end, you see, they still did what they had done. So what we see, inshallah, I'll wrap up here and then we'll move on next week, inshallah, is that one of the first things in terms of ihsan, in the way that we need to do it. Allah saying, look, do ihsan in the way that I've done ihsan to you. Ihsan doesn't just mean do nice and good things once in a while. Ihsan is in the same way that Allah has done it, that look, the most perfect thing possible that I can do for creations, short term, medium term, and long term, all the way till they reach their potential, that's what I've set up for all of you. So what that means for you and I is we have to do the same thing when we want to do ihsan to somebody else. When you want to do ihsan to your spouse, to your parents, to your grandparents, to your kids, to community members, to your co-workers and classmates, to everybody else, ihsan to the mu'mineen and mu'minat means I don't just give them something good, it means I try to set it up so that it's the most perfect action possible from now up until the day that they die. That means that requires a lot more planning and thinking than just, let me give them $5 or let me give them some gifts or treats or here and that. That's nice, that might be good, but that's not ihsan. Ihsan is a much, much higher level. It's much nicer than just giving out candy on Halloween, right? There's something much, much, farther and higher beyond that, which inshallah we'll discuss next week. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Let's move on to our Slido quiz, inshallah. With you can recite another Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. First person logged in is Taqweem. Technically should be a Q if you're going to transliterate properly, but it's okay. It's Taqweem is with the Qaf, but it's okay. I know sometimes Qafs and Q's and K's are switched around here. A-L. Haydar. M.M. I think maybe a few more seconds, inshallah. Manekia Bande Khuda. Okay, I think we've waited long enough. We can get started, inshallah. Yeah, go ahead and get started. You don't want to wait any longer. Which of the following statements is correct regarding performing sujood? Only the tips of the 2 big toes should touch the ground. Only the 2 big toes should touch the ground, but it can be any part of the tips of the toes. Any part of the 2 big toes must touch, but if other toes also touch, it's okay. As long as any 2 toes touch the ground, it's okay. I know it's a mouthful there, but hopefully it makes sense. Yeah, so this is what I figured. This is why I asked the question. So the majority of us, we're used to only putting the tips of our toes there. But It doesn't have to be the tips of your toes. Any part of your toe, as long as it's touching, is fine. And if your other feet, like, again, pretending these are the big toes, it doesn't have to be like that. It can be like that, and it can be like that, whatever, right? As long as the two big toes are touching, any part of it is fine. And if the other toes are touching, that's okay too, right? That's not a problem. And this is what happens. Sometimes we're used to doing it so long that it messes up our understanding of the actual fatwa. Okay, second question. Which of these is not a possible meaning of ihsan? Feeling good, looking beautiful, doing something good, or making something look beautiful, which is not a possible meaning of ihsan. If you remember, we went through 4 possible meanings or 4 possible levels. Feeling good is the one, right? Looking beautiful is possible, right? When something is Hasan, that means it looks beautiful, right? So feeling good is not a part of that. Okay, number 3. Which act of worship did Qarun refuse to perform which led to his condemnation and downfall? Salah, Hajj, Zakah, or Jihad? This one should be fairly easy, I hope. Although I get surprised every week. Okay, that's good. Or at least 84 is pretty good, yeah. Zakah, right? He went home, counted his money, said, no way, I'm giving that much away. So he refused to give his zakah. Last question. This Marvel superhero is often called the man without fear. Batman, Deadpool, Daredevil, or the Hulk? Which of these Marvel superheroes is often called the man without fear? By the way, I didn't pick this question, right? I do these are all random Slido generated. 61% of you got it. So the 6% of you said Batman. Batman's DC. So please. Ahsant. Very good, right? Okay. Qambar, ahsant. Good job, Qambar. Very good. 28 seconds, 3 out of 4. But nobody got 4 out of 4. Okay, same one, the possible meaning of ihsan. I think you guys messed that up last time too. Specialist, taqweem, thank you for correcting that. SM and MA. All of you got 3 out of 4, which is good. But it looks like you guys did not do enough ihsan because you're getting that wrong. So inshallah, we'll have to keep that question up. Okay, we will see you all inshallah next time. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ahl baytihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I don't think I can hear it. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا وارث آدم صفوة الله. السلام عليك يا وارث نوح النبي الله. السلام عليك كليم الله. السلام عليك يا وارث عيسى روح الله. السلام عليك يا وارث محمد حبيب الله. السلام عليك يا وارث علي أمير المؤمنين ولي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن محمد المصطفى. السلام عليك يا ابن علي المرتضى. السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء. السلام عليك يا ابن خديجة الكبرى. السلام عليك يا قد أقمت الصلاة وآتيت الزكاة وأمرت بالمعروف ونهيت عن المنكر وأطعت الله ورسوله حتى أتاك اليقين. فلعن الله أمة قتلت ولعن الله أمة ظلمت ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله، أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأسلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة، لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من مدلهمات ثيابها. وأشهد أنك من دائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين. وأشهد أنك إمام البر التقي الرزي الزكي الهادي المهدي. وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وعلام الهدى والأروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا. وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسله أني بكم مؤمن وبيا بكم موقن بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي وقلبي لقلبكم سلم وأمري لأمركم متبع. صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليك يا ابن نبي الله. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن الحسين الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها الشهيد وابن الشهيد. السلام عليك أيها المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله أحباء. السلام عليكم يا أسفياء الله أوداء. السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار محمد الحسن بن علي زكي الناس. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله بأبي أنتم وأمي تبتم وتابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما. فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك أيها العبد الصالح مطيع لله ولرسوله. أشهد أنك قد جاهدت ونصحت وصبرت حتى أتاك اليقين. لعن الله الظالمين لكم من الأولين والآخرين وألحقهم بدرائك الجحيم. Assalamu alayka ya sahib al-asri wal-zaman. Assalamu alayka ya khalifat al-Rahman. Assalamu alayka ya sharik al-Quran. Alaman, alaman, alaman. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.